Welcome to Slaying Excel Dragons video number 26. Hey, these are the videos that accompany this book, and we're still in chapter 5. We're talking about formulas and functions, and wow, we finally get to talk about the ever-powerful SUMPRODUCT function. Now, there's lots of topics, and actually, this video will have a lot of topics that are not in the book. SUMPRODUCT function and all of the amazing things that it can do. And in this video, we will get our first glimpse at array formulas, where we do calculations on ranges of cells or arrays. We'll get to see a bunch of functions: SUMPRODUCT, the YEAR function, the TEXT function, and others. Let's go over to Excel workbook. excelisfun Start is the workbook. You can always download it by clicking on the link directly below the video. And we're going to start on the sheet, SUMPRODUCTs. Now, let's look at a situation here. Data set, price, and units. Price and units. So each transaction, each record in this data set has price and units. But we don't have total sales. Well, no problem. We could easily do that. I'm going to highlight all the cells. And in the active cell, I'm going to say equals 2 cells to my left times 3 cells to my left. Control-Enter to populate all the cells. Control-Period to jump to the next corner, and F2. All right, so that's looking fine. Escape, and then I'm going to hit click right here, and Alt equals. There we have it. That's absolutely common. People do this all the time. And in fact, they want to see the total for each transaction. But there's some times where you just don't want to waste the real estate in your spreadsheet doing this. You just want one single formula that will be able to take a column and multiply it by another column and then add. Now let's look over here. I have broken this down. This is what we want to do. We want to take each individual cell, corresponding cell in the ranges, and first multiply them, get a range or an array of numbers, and then add. Now notice multiply, another word for multiply is product. Another word for add is sum. So anytime you have two ranges with the same dimension that you first want to multiply and then add, product sum, we can use the SUMPRODUCT. And so that's why they named it, because they named it backwards. It should be product sum, because they do multiplying first. All right, you ready? Equals SUMPRODUCT. SUMPRODUCT, I know they named it backwards. But notice the screen tip. All it has is a bunch of arrays. Now, the fact that it's named array instead of range or reference, like some other arguments, is important, and we'll see why in just a moment. But for right now, what is an array? An array just means more than one item, right? So an array could be a range of cells, for example. So we take our first array, exactly the same dimension, comma, to get to the second array as the second array. In order for the SUMPRODUCT to work with the default settings, you have to have the exact same size dimensions, right? Column, column, exactly the same number of rows and columns. One column, and then however many rows that is. That's it. It'll multiply them and then add them. And there we have it. Just there's so many great uses for SUMPRODUCT, especially in economics and finance, for example. Here's a totally common calculation done all the time. We have a portfolio of stocks, or actually we have one stock in this situation, but we'll see in a portfolio of stocks example in a minute. But you've estimated the probability that there will be a raging boom in the economy is 0.03. Normal will be 0.25, a recession 0.65, and a depression 0.07. Right? Those are our probabilities. We've also estimated for our stock A what the return will be in each state of the economy. So what do? We have to calculate the expected return, and it involves simply doing this. We highlight equals this times this, Control-Enter, and then add up. They're done thousands of times every day on the planet Earth for people estimating what they think their stock return will be. All right, anytime we have a column of formulas and then we're adding, this times this, we just use SUMPRODUCT. SUMPRODUCT. I'm going to go same size array, comma, get to the next array, and boom. Absolutely great function. Let's go ahead and look at an example where we have a portfolio of stocks. And this one's going to involve a little twist here, but no problem. There's a way to get around it. Here are our states of the economy, and here's the probability. We have stock A, B, and C. Oh, and these are our weights, right? 30% of our portfolio is in stock A, 40% in B, 30% in C. By the way, you could have as many as you want here, and this whole setup still works. And then the little intersecting table here shows for this particular state of the economy, for this stock, we're getting that return. Poor economy for stock B, we've estimated, wow, a whopping minus 15% return. Now, here's the situation. In order to do this, you actually have to create a whole table of formulas like this. So you'd say equals this, and when you use mixed cell reference, time the column header, and I'm going to lock it going down, but not to the side. I don't want that box to move when I go down, but when I move over to this column, I want it to move to 0.4, so I'm going to lock it going down. $sign in front of the row reference, but not the column. Times, and then I have, and I can't quite get it, so I'm going to scroll over right there. Now this one, when I copy it this way, I don't want it to move. I want it locked on that, but when I copy this down, I want the dancing ants to move down. So I'm going to lock the column reference, locked when I go across the letters, but not the row. Control Enter. So if I go to the corner here, you could see all of these were relative. Every single one of those we needed. And we got the column header and the row header, as we've seen a number of times before. And then what do? This is another one of those totally everyday calculations in finance and economics. All right, so then you add them. And that's our expected return for the portfolio. Well, guess what? That's a lot of calculations. And actually, when you're in finance, there's all sorts of situations like this where you have tables of data, and the SUMPRODUCT function comes to the rescue. Now, really what we did is we multiplied this range times this range times this range. And the way I remember it is if I have a bunch of values on the inside with column headers and row headers, just like we studied when we studied mixed cell references and assumption tables. Anytime I see this setup, I know I can use the SUMPRODUCT. But wait a second. These are not the same dimensions. So when we try to use, I'm going to do it right here, when we try to use SUMPRODUCT, it's just not going to work. And actually, you can multiply these in any order. Comma, here's the array, comma, and there's that big array. It's just not going to work, but no problem. Hit Enter. Value error just means you're wrong. It doesn't work. But there's a cool trick. We just, instead of using commas, we multiply. We use a multiplication symbol. And it actually does not matter in which order you put these references in. Now, this is jumping into the realm of array formulas, which we'll talk in a couple videos ahead. We'll formally talk about array. But what are we doing here? We're not multiplying we're not multiplying a cell times a cell, which is what we've been doing. Everything we've done so far in the book, that's what we've been doing. Cell times cell. It's a range times a range. Now, the only reason the SUMPRODUCT can handle this is because that argument right there says array. If you go and look in help, it'll tell you that this is one of the few functions that can handle doing operations on ranges or arrays. But watch this. I'm just going to enter. And just like that. I mean, that is one of the most amazing things to me, to be able to take, all of this real estate in a spreadsheet, right, and reduce it down to one cell calculation. The SUMPRODUCT makes it possible. So SUMPRODUCT, anytime you're multiplying arrays, whether they're different sized dimensions, then you have to use multiplication. I'm going to click Escape. Or the same size. This is the more common situation. SUMPRODUCT comes to the rescue. Now, we got to go investigate SUMPRODUCT a little bit more deeply than this, and then look at some examples. I'm going to go over to this other sheet, SP2. Now, so far in the book, we've talked about COUNTIFs and SUMIFs, where we have more than one criteria to either count or add or calculate an average or whatever you're doing. And we've used the COUNTIF. So let's just remind ourselves. The reason why it's going to become important to see how SUMPRODUCT can come to the rescue is because if you ever have to work on a computer that does not have Excel 2007 and 10, which there still are a lot of computers out there, or you're sending spreadsheets to people who have Excel 2003, there's a well-known method of simulating what the COUNTIFs does. And actually, this method we're going to see came long before they invented the COUNTIFs function. All right, let's just remind ourselves with COUNTIF. Remember, we have an S and its multiple criteria. GALT, so that's sales rep. Control-Shift-Down arrow F4, comma, and the criteria. Actually, do you see that I locked that? I didn't need to because I'm not copying this formula anywhere, but it jumped the screen back up, so that was convenient. Criteria 1, comma, criteria range 2. Well, it's customer, so there. Control-Shift-Down arrow F4 to jump it back up. Actually, you know what you can do is once you do this, which is what I do sometimes with formulas like this, I go Control-Shift-Down arrow F4, F4 3 times. It's just like faster to do that than to take your mouse and click and drag. Criteria 2. So we could see COUNTIFs, beautiful if you have 2007, 2010. Now, how did we do this before? We use SUMPRODUCT. Now, let's go ahead and type out our SUMPRODUCT. And we're going to have to get a little tricky here because SUMPRODUCT by default doesn't count, right? But no problem. Our array. Now, we've seen logical tests already. We've talked about a lot of logical tests. But what would happen if we just said, hey, SUMPRODUCT, let's take the whole column, Control-Shift-Down arrow F4. And I see this. I'm going to actually scroll over so we can see this a little bit better. Okay, I've got the sales rep column over there. And what if I said, is anything in that range equal to that criteria? Now, we've done this cell to cell, and we know it comes out true or false. Now, can you guess what this will give us? This entire range, every single cell in that range will be compared to just that single criteria. And because logical formulas always come out true or false, this will give us an array of trues and falses. So I'm going to hit the F9 key to evaluate. And you can see that is our result. Now, normal formulas cannot handle an array. And we can see for the first time the syntax for arrays. Now, an array can be a range of cells, like we did in our last couple examples, or it can be an array created inside your formula. Now, let me Control Z. That's what I mean by an array created inside your formula. We did some comparative, or we could use math operators too. But whatever operation, it's being done on an array or a range of cells. As soon as it evaluates, F9, and it evaluates when you hit Enter, this array is created. Curly brackets always are on either side of the array. The semicolon means that you're going down across rows. If it was a comma, it means it would be going across columns. It means the data would be stored and moved across columns. The way I memorize that is I think comma starts with a C and column starts with a C. So I always remember the comma is column, and then I just remember, oh yeah, the other thing, which happens to be a semicolon, is the row. Now I'm going to Control Z because I do not want to hard code that in there. Now, let me hit F9 again. There's a problem. SUMPRODUCT cannot read false and true. It just won't do it. So I'm going to Control Z. So we have to invent a way to convert trues and falses to zeros and ones. Now, there are all sorts of ways you can do it. Let me just show you a few. But before I show you, you have to encase the equal sign, which remember, that's a comparative operator. If you think all the way back to the video we did talking about order of operations, that's done at the very, very end. So if we're going to do some other operation on this and we want these trues and falses to evaluate first, we have to put parentheses around it. I'm going to multiply it by 1. Oh, this is called Boolean logic. We've jumped into the realm of Boolean logic or Boolean math. Anytime you multiply a 1 times trues and falses, it converts them to, and I'll hit F9, ones and zeros. Totally cool. And that's the big trick inside of SUMPRODUCT to get to count with some condition. Now I'm going to Control Z. However, there's lots of ways we could do this. Guess what? We could divide by 1. And I'm going to hit F9. Oh, that does it. Control Z. We could add 0. Any operation that you do on an array will convert, math operator here that we do on this array will convert it to ones and zeros. So I'm going to hit F9. And actually, I have a bunch of examples down here of all the different ways you can do it. But guess what? There is one way that is faster calculating than all the others. And I've done some tests, and I've read forums online that have done extensive testing. And the magic way is double negative. Double negative. Think about it. If you have the number 1 and you put a negative sign in it, it's -1. But if you put a negative negative, it's the opposite of -1, which is back to 1. So this double negative will convert trues and falses to ones and zeros. And it's just the fastest calculating way. And for large spreadsheets, that does matter. I'm going to hit F9. OK? So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to do always when we have a series of trues and falses and we want ones and zeros, we're going to use double negative. Now, that's the first array, comma, and our second array. Well, we have a second criteria. So I'm going to type double negative, open parentheses. And I'm going to go get the customer column. Control Shift down or F4 to jump back. And I'm going to say, is that equal to this? Now, when we do our little F9 trick, it is ones and zeros. Now, before I show you how this works, because it's kind of really cool, I have to enter this because I'm going to do something in the middle of the function. I'm going to enter it, and we see that it's 4. But now let me show you how it's calculated. And we could run Formula Evaluator. But Formula Evaluator doesn't show us as explicitly as I would like. Formulas, Formula Evaluator right there, or Alt-TUF, T-U-F. Now, notice it's highlighting. So if I click Enter, you could see, oh, it just shows us all of the items. Then I hit Enter. It shows the trues and falses. Then I hit it again, It shows me the ones and zeros. And then I do this for this one. Now maybe this, oh, let me do that again. OK, so this last step is not going to show us the last step. It just gives us the answer there. So now I want to go to the formula, but that almost shows us it. And I just want to highlight this and hit F9. And then highlight this second part without that last parenthesis and hit F9. And here's how it works. It goes 2 arrays, the same dimension. What's 0 times 0? 0. That means it got a false and a false. What's 1 times 1? Oh, true, true. Well, what's 1 times 1? It is 1. Right? What's the next one? 1 times 0. Oh, a true and a false. So the answer is 0. When you finally, I don't think I can do this, but I can go like this. I can cheat here and multiply these two and hit Evaluate. And you will see you get a single array, F9, of just the only time we get a 1 is when there was a 1 in the first array and a 1 in the second array. Multiplied together, we get 1. And that's how you count. Escape, because I've F9'd more than one time, and so the Control Z won't work. So if you do F9 to look at how your formula is working, please enter the formula first and then open it up. I have to click Escape, or I will not retain the original formula. Escape. OK? Can't tell you enough how many unbelievably complicated or devious problems in Excel can be solved with the sum product and the double negative. All right, now the sum ifs, I'm just going to come down. No, I'm not. I'm going to let you do the sum ifs, but now I got to show you that was counting. I got to show you how to do this with adding. So we want to add all the sales here. Equals sum product, double negative, open parentheses. I'm going to get that first column, Control Shift down arrow, equals this, comma. Now notice it says array 1, I'm sorry, a closed parenthesis, and then it says array 1, so comma, and then double negative, open parentheses, and I'm going to get this second column. Anytime that is equal to this, that's going to give us our strings of ones and zeros. And finally, comma to get to the third array. Oh yeah, 1 times this column. And that's it. Only to when you get 1 times 1 will that 1 be carried forward into this. And so ultimately, we will get a string of zeros and whatever the sales from that column is. And I could trick this. Oh, no, I need to enter it first, or I'll lose my formula. You could trick this in memory here just to see how it works. And you'll see that you get a string of F9, just 0 and then a 220. That was 1 times 220, and then all these zeros. So it gets a sales number only when there's 2 trues. I'm going to click Escape. All right, you can look through here. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, but just start getting used to the double negative because it's the fastest calculating. Now, we're going to use this idea. For us in 2007 and 2010, we don't have to do these formulas anymore because we have COUNTIFs and SUMIFs. But there are some situations where we have to use SUMPRODUCT. So let's come back over to this sheet, SUMPRODUCT, and I'm going to scroll over and look at 2 great examples over here. Oh, no, 3. So I'm going to come over here and scroll down. Absolutely a totally cool example. I'm going to click here and delete. Our goal, and actually we saw this. Let me Control Z. We saw this bunch of video goes when we were talking about formula elements. We got a preview of this, but now we want to see how this works. Now here's the problem with this setup here. And let me see if I could zoom in. Actually, probably not zoom in too much. Go like this. The problem is our criteria is a year. And we know from our study of number formatting, if I wipe away the formatting and show general number format, Control-Shift-tilde, Control-Shift-tilde, those are serial numbers. Dates are serial numbers. That means the number of days since December 31st, 1899. Now I'm going to Control-Z, and that's the formatting that sits on top of those serial numbers. So how in the world can you match a year criteria in years to days? You can use the year function. Now, here's the long way to do it. People would just go like this, equals year of this. Now, we haven't seen the year function yet, but the year function, whoa, it's totally programmed to look at serial numbers, and it will just spit out the year. Now, I've highlighted these cells, and in the active cell, I have my formula. So now I hold Control-Enter to populate. You can see it gives us just the year. Now, here's the reason that the SUMPRODUCT is going to come to our rescue. And SUMIFs and COUNTIFs cannot do this. This argument right here for year, it says serial number. It's expecting a single number. The fact that we are going to give it a whole range of numbers and then match, say, hey, whole range, are you equal to that year? Anytime you do that, you are jumping into the realm of array formulas. And SUMIFs and COUNTIFs can't handle arrays. So let's go ahead and see how this works. I just want to right off the bat do the year. And instead of using the serial number a single day, I'm going to do a whole range. Now again, that's what makes this an array formula, and that's where the SUMPRODUCT will come to our rescue. But let's just see. Let's evaluate this and see what it does. It's totally clever. F9. Oh, that's so cool. Instead of having a bunch of serial dates with days, it now gives us an array of years. Control-Z. Well, the fact that this is expecting a single number and we gave it an array, not many functions in Excel can handle that at all. So we're going to put it inside of SUMPRODUCT. So I'm going to say SUMPRODUCT. Now, I'm going to take the year. Notice it says array 1 and say, hey, any of those equal to this? Let's just go ahead and see what this does. F9. Oh, beautiful. A true and a true, just to match that 2010 and that 2010. Well, as we saw just a moment ago, SUMPRODUCT can't handle falses and true, so I'm going to Control Z. And what am I going to do? Put a double negative. But remember, order of operations. Remember back in that video we did order of operations? This is a unitary operator. This happens way up at the top of order of operations. This happens at the end. No problem. Just put parentheses around it. There's our first array, and you can highlight it and hit F9 to prove yourself. There are zeros and ones. Control Z. What do we have to multiply that by? Comma to get to our second array, and simply just a beautiful, simple formula to deal with, efficiently deal with in formula with a formula method, adding up all the sales for 2010. And now if we type 2009, we should just get that one row. Oh, do we have 2009? Oh, yeah, we have two of them right here. Notice I've highlighted two holding the Control key, and I'm going to check down here in the status bar. Beautiful. All right, great use when we have an array created inside the formula. There's very few functions that can handle it, but SUMPRODUCT handles it beautifully. All right, two more awesome examples of how to use SUMPRODUCT when we're stuck with arrays. Whoops, I have the answer there. Now these next two are going to get a little involved here, but worth trying to figure this out, because what we're going to try and do here is weighted average cost. Now this is common. What's different here is I gave us a huge data set. So when I Control down arrow, so there's 166 records. And for weighted average, here's what you do. Every time, and you could add an extra column and then do it that way, but we want to have the weighted average price of each product 9. And oftentimes this is used for calculating inventory value. So you need the weighted average price, right? Or cost in our case. But product 9, oh, how are we going to get that? We need this times this, plus this times this, and we go all the way down. This times this, etc. This times this, this times this. That'll give us the total we paid for all of product 9. Then we have to divide by, and we need to do a conditional add, this plus this. Because remember, when you calculate weighted average, all the amount you paid for product 9 divided by the total number we bought. SUMPRODUCT. And look, we need to do it for all of these quick. Imagine doing this by hand. It would just be torture. We're going to use the SUMPRODUCT. Now the first key here is, and I'll do SUMPRODUCT, is just, and we'll do our double negative because we're going to have a series of trues and false, and we need them ones and zeros. The first part is just, hey, there's our criteria. And as we copy the formula down, criteria is here, here, always compared to this column. So I'm going to say Control Shift down arrow and F4 to lock it. And we need it locked whenever that is equal to this. Now, right now, if we close this off, this would just give us a count of how many product 9s we bought. So I'm going to Control Enter. So that gives us 19. Now that would be silly because we could use the COUNTIF or COUNTIFs function. But watch this. Remember, our goal is to multiply this column times this column, because we need to add up everything we paid for product 9. So what do? We have our string of ones and zeros, comma, array 1, this. Control Shift down arrow, F4. Or that's array 2. Array 3, this one. These are going to give us the ones and zeros. These are going to give us the actual numbers we want to multiply together. Control Shift down arrow, F4. And that will give us the total we calculated, the total amount we paid for product 9. Now, the reason why we can't use SUMIF or COUNTIF is because we're multiplying. We need to multiply two columns. So anytime you have that situation, same dimensions, multiplying, and then adding, that's where SUMPRODUCT comes in handy. Now we need to double click and send this down. Now that's just adding. How much did we pay for product 1? That's it. From this transactional data set, that's the total we paid. But we need to divide this by the count. Well, we can't. It's actually not the count. We need to conditionally add, because we have 10 units here, 12 units here. So we need to say conditionally add everything up in this column that's equal to product 9. Now, we could do this a few ways. I'm going to divide by SUMIF. Now, I've used SUMIFs in lieu of SUMIF when I have just one criteria. But I think I will do the SUMIF just to show you this function. The reason I usually don't like to use this function is everyone sees or me, when I was learning, I would see the range, and then I would immediately go to the range I wanted to add. I wish they'd called it criteria range and this sum range. Well, now, the fix for this is just to pay attention. Always look at the last argument first, and you go, oh, yeah, that's the sum range, so this must be the criteria range. So the criteria range is that. Control-Shift-Down arrow F4. Comma to get to the criteria and its left arrow. Comma to get to the sum range and its units. Control-Shift-Down arrow F4. Now that's a big formula, right? But if we break it down step by step, it looks big and scary now. But if we build it in our little steps, then it's not so scary. Control-Enter. Double-click and send it down. That just plain and simple, when you have a big transactional data set like this, and you don't want to waste lots of spreadsheet area, just a great formula to calculate the weighted average cost for each product. All right, we have one last example of how awesome SUMPRODUCT can be. Ooh, and I already have the answer here too. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to get rid of this green color here, even though there are formulas there that are calculating. All right, here's our situation. We have a data set. And if we scroll way, OK, so that's the data set right there. Dates, sales rep, customer, and time of phone call. And if you scroll way down, this set is huge. If I control down arrow, it's like 682 records. Again, whoops, I did control home. This kind of data set is very common. And all we want to do is, let's say we're right here. We have a table that we need to fill with formulas. 7/1/2010. I actually want the 7th month and Mo as my criteria. Now, the problem with this will be is that we don't have just month information here. And further, this is a serial number. It has a year. If I said, even if I could use the month function like I used the year function for month 7, there'd be a problem. Because if I said, hey, month function, give me all month 7s, it would add up all the 7s for all the years, whether it's 11, 10, or 12, or whatever. All right? So we somehow need to deal with that. I want only the month 7 for 2010, and then the month 8 for 2010. And then secondarily, in this intersecting cell here, our second bit of criteria is Mo. So we are going to construct a formula that allows us to just do 2 criteria. But really, there's 3. It's month, year, and Mo. And then we're going to count. So I want to know how many sales, or how many actual phone calls, not the amount of time, but the count. How many phone calls Mo made in the month of 7 in 2010. Now, in order to do this trick, we're going to have to talk about number formatting again, but we're going to talk about custom number formatting. Now, what's the keyboard shortcut for format cells? Control-1. Now, normally we just, at least so far in this class, we just went to date and selected one. But I would like to go down to custom. Absolutely, the power of number formatting is in the custom. And let's look. This is where you can actually come, and if you know the code for custom number formatting, you can just type it. Now, we're not going to so much get into the custom number code, except for dates, because dates are so easy. Notice what it did. MD year. Let's just see what happens if we came up here and typed M. Oh, 2 of them gives us 06, and 3 gives us the abbreviation. Look, MMM, abbreviation. And finally, 4 M's gives me the whole month. If I did day, 2 days, it gives me a 0. 3, it gives me abbreviation. 4, it gives me the whole day name. So all you need to know about date number formatting, custom formatting in particular, is M is for month, D is for day, Y is for year. So usually I just come down here and, excuse me, I just try a bunch of things till it looks right there. All right, so I'm going to try. I'm really interested in the month and the year. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to say MM/year, year, year. All right, notice I wasn't even quite sure how many I had to type. I just kept typing them until I saw the sample I want. All right, this is all under custom. I'm going to click OK. Actually, you can teach yourself how to do custom number formatting. You just click on whichever one you want and then click down here and see what it is. All right, I'm going to click OK. Whoa. Now, that serial number with a day 1 is still under there. All right, now I want to show you a trick that we can do. Equals this, and then I'm going to hit F9. Oh, yeah, that's the serial number because formulas don't look at formatting. But we can actually use something called the text function. And the text function, just like we saw the dollar function earlier in an earlier video, dollar function converted a number to text. Well, we can use the text function. Now, the advantage of the text function is that you put any value, and most of the times we put, or whatever number you want. And you have to know custom number formatting. Custom number formatting. And you got to put it in double quotes. If you forget how to do this, you click on this and go to help. And it has all sorts of great examples and explains. Like, for example, will explain that whatever custom number format, it better go in double quotes. All right, I'm just going to put MM, year, year, year. End double quote, and then close parentheses. Let's just see what this will give us. F9. Oh, look at that, 07/2010. So in essence, inside our formula, from a serial number, we created some criteria we can use. Control Z. All right, now I'm going to create my formula right in this cell, and then even though we're in the middle of the cell, we can then copy it down and over and stuff like that. But what do we really want to match this criteria? We have to have this right here. And by the way, let's just talk about this for a second. When I copy this formula over this direction, it's got to be locked on that row header. So I'm going to lock it right now with the F4 key in front of the, and notice we're way out in the AAs, ABs, ACs. Column reference lock, so it's locked this way. But when I go down, it moves. The blue box will move down to the next one because no $sign in front of the 8. All right, now I want to see if I can compare this criteria created in the formula, to this entire column. No problem. I'm going to use the text function again. I'm going to close and type an equal sign just so I feel OK. That is the criteria. But now, instead of putting a single value here, we're just going to highlight that whole column. No way. So here, Control-Shift-Down arrow, F4, and it needs to be locked in all directions. Now, here's our situation, just as we saw with the year function. This function is expecting one number. The fact that we gave it a bunch, we are now jumping into the realm of array formulas, which, of course, SUMPRODUCT can handle. All right, so we have a bunch of numbers there in our range, comma, and the format. Well, I'm just going to copy this over here, Control-C and Control-V. Now, what we have is we've converted that whole column. Now, if I evaluate this, I don't even think I can because there's too many characters. But it would give us that whole column with just the same exact number format. And then it's comparing it against that. Let's just see what happens if I hit F9. Oh, there it is. So it works. You can see up here, there's not very many trues. Oh, there's a true right there. Now I'm going to quickly Control-Z because I don't want to do that. All right, that is going to be our tricky way of getting two criteria, month and year, from that cell. All right, and now we're going to put it inside of SUMPRODUCT. And since we're counting, I'm going to put double negative, open parentheses. Remember, we have an equal sign right here, so that is always calculated at the very end. So in order to get that double negative to calculate after the equal sign, we put it in parentheses. Right now, this would count all of the transactions that occurred in the month 7 and the year 2010. But that's not what we want. We have one other bit of criteria. So there's our array 1, that whole thing there, comma. And now what do we want? We want to find out mo. So we have another column. So I'm going to go over here. And by the way, we're going to get trues and falses. So double negative, open parentheses. There's the sales rep. Control-Shift down arrow, F4. And I'm going to say, are any of those equal to mo? Now, cell references. When I copy the formula down, got to be locked on mo. But when I copy it this way, move to Tino. When I copy it back over this way, it's got to move to Chin. So it's that little dancing ant is moving this way across the columns, but not when it's down across the row. So I'm going to hit F4 twice and lock the number row reference, but not the column. Close parentheses on the trues and false, and close parentheses on our sum product. 5. Now I'm going to copy it up. Control C, Control V. Now watch this. I'm going to highlight the whole table. This is a great trick for the Control Enter trick. Now notice we have something there, but when we paste everything in, it will be replaced. I'm going to put this into edit mode. The active cell is up in the corner where I put my formula. I'm going to put it in edit mode. And now I'm going to repopulate all the populate all the cells with Control Enter. And there we have, just like magic, I'm going to click my last diagonally furthest one away. Oh, this is a big formula. It's not. And I can't really see my column headers. Oh, I can admire that one there. And I can try and admire this one. Oh, look at that. It's just perfect. Wow. So as we're progressing through this book, you know, we're using all the things we've been using in our book. We're using the sum product, which means sum, multiplying and then adding. We used our double negative to convert trues and falses to ones and zeros. We used our text function to coerce month and year data out of daily serial numbers. We used a logical formula. And we used our knowledge of cell references. Oh, wow. When you study Excel and you keep learning more and more cumulative stuff, there's just hardly, there is almost nothing you cannot do. All right, hey, that's a lot about sum product and a bunch of other topics also. When we come back in our next video, we'll talk about the if function in great detail. All right, see you next video. Oh, but before we go away, here's some homework to do now. We're in the workbook Slaying Excel Dragons Homework 1 to Chapter 1 and 9. We're on the sheet Chapter 5, pages 207 to 47. And there is homework problem 45. There's the problem. Here's the answer, 46. Answer, 47 answer, and 48. Some of these problems are pretty challenging, but that just means they're more fun. All right, now we'll see you next video.